Adam Burke, by the way, up on VSiN.com a while back, broke down the top 5 picks to look at in week 1. And the way we want to do it is run through a couple different options here for week 1. So week 1, let's take a look at Adam's top 5 selections to pick on. To pick on them like a bully. Yeah. The Patriots, the Titans, the Broncos, the Giants, and the Panthers. Those are the top 5 teams to pick on throughout the whole year. Now, this is a theory that can get you in a little trouble. Now, it's 5 teams as opposed to 1, right? Mm-hmm. Like a couple of years ago, was it the Cardinals or whoever it was?
Yes.
We're going to pick on them. Well, I fell trap to that because in week 3 last year, as the Dallas Cowboys were a 12.5-point favorite at the Arizona Cardinals, they lost. Mm-hmm. So if you're picking on one team, unless they're the Detroit Lions or the Cleveland Browns, in recent years, they're probably not going to go winless.
Yeah, and that's so the starting point for that is that it's in the first few years of this, you did hear some people saying like, "I'm going to play against this team every week." Well, like that, you're assuming then that the team's going to go over throughout this entire process, and that's not the case. So the way that Adam has handled this in picking a handful of teams to strategically try to play against most of the times, I believe is the better way to go. And I think a vast majority of people go that way anyway. But the fact that is the thought process, I'm going to pick, for example, last year, Texans win total was 4.5 last year, if I remember correctly?
Yes.
So, that's a team that's got a pretty poor win total. In fact, it's in the range of these teams that we're talking about here. If you would have picked on the Houston Texans, you would fall flat on your face, right? So that's something where I think if you have a handful of teams you believe to be on the bottom of the totem pole that you want to consistently find angles to play against, that is, I think, a much better strategy than doing this team's going to suck. I'm going to play against the Patriots every single week. The Patriots are probably going to win about 4 games. You're going to lose at some point if you try to strategize a path that gets you against the Patriots every single week. Unless you have multiple entries, and then you can go different ways. But if you're talking about just a singular path, that's going to lead to a loss at some point.
So I want to point out something else that is obviously a unique wrinkle to the Circa Survivor, which is Thanksgiving and Black Friday, as well as Christmas Day and I believe the day after Christmas, but I'll double check that. But let's just start with Thanksgiving and Black Friday. This is its own week. Now, thanks to last year adding the Black Friday game, mm-hmm. we do have an extra game to utilize, which maybe most people will utilize, the Kansas City Chiefs, even though last year on Christmas Day they lost to the Las Vegas Raiders. So you have to, as you plan this out, keep some of these teams in your back pocket. Take a look at Christmas. The Chiefs play on Christmas as well. Now, I think you'd rather have the Chiefs on Black Friday against the Raiders at home again versus at the Steelers. However, based off of the odds, JVT, this is pretty tough. Christmas and the day after Christmas, this is its own week. Chiefs at Steelers, Ravens at Texans, Seahawks versus the Bears at the Bears. So you don't have to decide now what you're going to use, but you need to keep a team back or a couple teams back just in case. And that Christmas Day and the day after Christmas is pretty tough.
Well, that's the point, which is, so for this, to me, Christmas is what makes it one of the more difficult choices for this first week. So if you look at it, for example, we talked to Derek about this before, but the thought could be like, we're going to use the Chiefs right out of the gate here against the Baltimore Ravens in week 1 for Survivor. Having said that, you eliminate, at this point right now, the biggest favorite on Christmas, right, which would be the Kansas City Chiefs. So then you have the underdog in that matchup right now, which would be the Steelers, the Ravens or the Texans in a coin flip spot, which is a 1.5-point spread, or the Seahawks and the Bears, which is a pretty tough situation to be in too. So it's going to be pretty fascinating because I think you ultimately want to save the Chiefs for that day. And you see the biggest spreads here. These are your biggest favorites for week 1, and more than likely, these are going to be your targets to use this week. The Bengals, the Bills, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Saints, and the Bears. And for my money, I come down to 2 teams to use for week 1 Survivor. They're both bird teams. Can you tell me who they are?
Both bird teams.
That's right.
In week 1.
One of them's on this list. It's the Seahawks.
Yes.
One of them's Seahawks.
I was going to say,
road start.
You're going to take Cardinals plus 6.5?
No, maybe. I love them. But a start on the road for Bo Nix, who tore apart the opposition over the weekend with an average depth of target of 4 yards. Going on the road against the secondary and this defense with Mike McDonald at the helm, leading what I think is going to be a very good defense. I think it's going to be a tough spot for them to go on the road and win that game. I think the Seahawks are going to be one of the more popular Survivor
Falcons?
picks. No.
Oh. Are you
the
thinking
game takes place in Brazil.
I was going to say, you could do the Eagles and you could buy back in.
You could go a little dicey and go with the Eagles as well. As somebody who, and the market seems to head in this direction, right, believes that the Eagles are a little undervalued. Maybe the probability of them winning a neutral site game is higher than what you expect. Eagles are not one of those teams that are going to play on the holidays, so you don't have to worry about that. But I think if you're going to go a little bit more risque and try to save some of these bigger fish for later down the road, I do think the Eagles are an option for you that first week. But at the top of the list for me would be the Seahawks.
Eagles would be very risky unless you do have the bankroll, and I can't speak for you, but I probably am not going to be the buyback type if I went to Eagles. But
probably, so there's a chance.
There's a chance. But there is a wrinkle that you could put in 10 selections, or however many you want to put in, on the Eagles. If they lose to the Packers, you could still get back in. The deadline is that Saturday, and Derek will probably talk about that more on Thursday when he comes in. But, he's won in our competition here that he's already taken the Ravens. Like, he likes the Ravens there in week 1. I would imagine, JVT, the most used team will be the Cincinnati Bengals. And my question to you, is that a mistake to go Bengals in week 1? Or are you in the camp, and I don't think you are, hey, man, you just got to survive to the next week. The Bengals are the biggest favorite in week 1. They're home to the New England Patriots. If you're looking at their schedule right now and who else they might be significant favorites against, they host the Commanders on Monday Night Football in week 3. They also, week 4, they're at Carolina. Week 9, they're home to the Raiders. And those would probably be the only other options unless you want to go week 17 against Denver.
Yeah, no, I think like the Denver one in week 17 is one where, that's probably the one where you're like, hey, man, I wish there's probably something else you could use there. Carolina in week 4 is obviously a pretty meaty spot. You're on the road, which does make it's a slightly more dicey. But I'd also say, too, that also in week 4, New England has to go to San Francisco. So if you use the Bengals here, you might be inclined to use San Francisco that week against the New England Patriots.
Yeah. So that is...
They'll probably be up there. I mean, I'm really interested to see, as somebody who does think highly, of a team that is floating around in their win total range, where the Bills end up on the grand scheme of most used entries for Survivor. Because you can poke a lot of holes in the Bills when we're talking about back end of the defense, the injuries that are starting to pile up, what's going on in the wide receiver room. Are they going to be as popular as many people think against the Cardinals team that we talked about it last year, right? Ruined some lives when it came to Survivor. Was one of the was a solid ATS team last year, and at the very least, market did move up on their win total. So there is some thought that the market shapers and whatnot believe that the Cardinals are a little bit better than the initial thoughts of what the odds makers did.
Yeah, it's going to be outside.
Who are your top targets? Who are yours? I said mine.
Week 1,
give away the special sauce. Come on,
I would just go Bengals. That would be lame. I know you'd be wasting them, but hey, man,
I'm going Eagles.
Survive and advance.